Alright, today we're going to go over 2.7 homework part 1, page 141 to 142, numbers 1, then 2 to 20 even. For the equation, x minus 1 squared times x plus 2 equals 0, a blank solution is 1 because the factor x minus 1 appears twice. Think about it this way, if I wrote this out the long way, I would be x minus 1 twice, and then x plus 2. If I solve all these parentheses, I get x is equal to 1, x is equal to 1, and then x is equal to negative 2. See how x is equal to 1 showed up twice? That means it's a repeated solution. That's it for number 1. Number 2 says, explain the difference between complex conjugates and irrational conjugates. Well, complex conjugates look like they're still sets, so both of these are sets. Complex conjugates are a plus bi, a minus bi. So they have a real part and an imaginary part. Irrational conjugates are a minus radical b, a plus radical b. So they still both have a real part, but these ones have radicals. So complex has imaginary parts. Irrational has a radical. And that's it. Alright, 4, 6, and 8 are both going to be very, very simple. Or all three going to be very simple. You're going to find the number of solutions. The number of solutions is all based on the degree. So number 4 is going to have 3 solutions because the highest degree is 3. Number 6 is going to have 4 solutions because the highest degree is 4. And 8 is going to have 12 solutions because the highest degree is 12. That's simple for 4, 6, and 8. The only difference between this section and last section is last section we said there could be 3 solutions. There could be 3 real solutions. There could be 4 real solutions. Now we're going to say there are that many solutions and we need to find all of them. So that's it. Alrighty, so for 10 through 18, we're going to follow 3 steps. The 3 steps that are written in red on the front board. Step 1 says find your P and Q, write those factors, and put all your P's over all your Q's. Step 2 says you're going to make that list of P's over Q's, and you're going to guess something and keep on going until it works. And you're going to use the synthetic division until you have no remainder. Step 3, you're going to factor and solve. Or you might have to repeat step 2, because if it's x to the third, you definitely have to repeat step 2. Or you might have to use the quadratic formula. And remember, the quadratic formula is x is equal to the opposite of b plus or minus b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So that might be needed. All right? And that's going to be what we do for 10 through 18. So number 10, we have f of x equals x to the fourth minus 6x cubed plus 7x squared plus 6x minus 8. There's my p. There's my q. Since q is 1, my list of p's over q's is pretty simple. Just plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 4, plus or minus 8. Just all the ways we're going to get 8, because all of them over 1 are just the same thing. Now I'm going to make my box. Inside the box comes right here. I have 1, negative 6, positive 7, positive 6, negative 8. Outside the box, I'm going to start with 1. Drop down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Negative 6 and 1 is negative 5. 1 times negative 5 is negative 5. Gives me 2. 1 times 2 is 2. 6 plus 2 is 8. 1 times 8 is 8. No remainder. That means one answer is x is equal to positive 1. So I have x cubed minus 5x squared plus 2x plus 8. Since it's x cubed, I'm going to repeat step 2. All right. That means I'm going to have my P, have my Q, and it's the same for your Q, so I'm going to use the same list all over again. So I'm going to make a new box. This time I'm going to put these numbers inside the box. 1, -5, 2, and 8. Outside the box, I'm going to start with 1. Or I mean -1, because I just tried 1. 1 could work again, it's still possible, but I usually try different numbers first. So I dropped on the 1. 1 times -1 is -1. -5 and -1 is -6. -1 and -6 is +6. 2 and 6 is 8. -1 and 8 is -8. No remainder. That means x equals -1 is a solution. I know I have to have 4 of them. I only have 2, so I have to find 2 more. I could repeat step 2. I could use the quadratic, but I'm going to factor this as x squared minus 6x plus 8 because it's factorable. So I'm going to factor. Alright. How do I get 8? Well, -2 and -4 gives me +8. They add up to be -6. So I have x minus 2, x minus 4, all equal to 0, which means x equals 2, x equals 2, and x is equal to 4. Because remember, we set each of those parentheses equal to 0. And that's how I get my last 2 answers. So now look, I have 1, 2, 3, 4 different solutions just like I thought. I'm done. And that's it for number 10. Alright, number 12. We have x to the 4th minus 9x squared minus 4x plus 12. There's my P. There's my Q. So my list of P's over Q's is plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 4, plus or minus 6, and plus or minus 12. I make my box. I need a placeholder for the x cubed, because there is no x cubed there. So I have 1, 0, -9, -4, and 12. Drop down the 1. Outside, I'm going to put 1. So 1 times 1 is 1. 0 and 1 is 1. 1 times 1 is 1. Gives me -8. Gives me -8. Gives me -12. Gives me -12. No remainder. That means that's a solution. So first solution is x is equal to 1. Now I have x cubed plus x squared minus 8x minus 12. Since it's x cubed, I'm going to repeat step 2. So I make a new box, and inside this box I put these numbers in. 1, 1, -8, -12. My P's and my Q's didn't change, so I use the same list. This time I'm going to try -1. Drop down the 1. -1 times 1 is -1, gives me 0. -1 times 1 is -1, gives me -9, gives me +9. That's going to give me 3 remainder, which means -1 doesn't work. So I'm going to get rid of that, and I'm going to try something else. Now remember, I like to keep a track of everything that fails. I call it a fail list. So I'll put -1 on my fail list. Anything that fails, I'm going to put on that list. So now that I tried -1, I'm going to try 2. Drop down the 1. 2 times 1 is 2. 1 and 2 is 3. 2 times 3 is 6. -8 and 6 is -2. 2 times -2 is -4. That's going to give me a remainder of -16, which means 2 is not going to work. It goes to my fail list. So now that I tried 2, I'm going to try -2. Drop down the 1. 1 times -2 is -2, gives me -1. -2 times -2 is +2, gives me -6. Negative times a negative is a positive. 12. No remainder. So -2 is an answer. Now remember, I need to have 2 more solutions, so I'm not done yet. X squared minus x minus 6. I could use the quadratic formula, but I'm going to factor it. How do I get -6? How about -3 and 2? That will give me that negative 1, so I get x minus 3, x plus 2, all equal to 0. So that means my x is equal to 3, and my x is equal to negative 2. So there's my last one answers. X is equal to 3, and x is equal to negative 2. Notice I have 4 answers. They're not all different. These are repeated solutions, and that's okay. Still 4 solutions, because part of the fundamental theorem of algebra states that we count repeated solutions as separate solutions. So that's it for 12. All right, 14. We're going to treat it exactly like we did 12, where I find my p. I have a q. So my p's over my q's are plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 4. I don't need that twice. Plus or minus 8, plus or minus 16. Now I need placeholders. I need 2 of them. A lot of people remember the first one, but they forgot the second one. You need placeholders for x cubed and x, because there's no x cubed or x term. So I'm going to make my box. Inside my box, I'm going to have 1, 0, 15, 0, negative 16, 2 placeholders. I'm going to start with 1, drop it down. 1 times 1 is 1, 0 plus 1 is 1, 1 times 1 is 1, 16, 16, 16, 1 times 16 is 16, no remainder. Means x is equal to 1 is my first solution. Remember, I have to have 4 total. All right. So this becomes x cubed plus x squared plus 16x plus 16. Since it's x cubed, I'm going to repeat step 2. And my p's and q's didn't change. I don't need a new p and q. Sometimes they change, especially if you have a number different than 1. Usually that's when they change. So I make a new box. Inside that box I have 1, 1, 16, 16. This time I try negative 1. Drop down the 1. Negative 1 times 1 is negative 1. It gives me 0. 0. 16. Negative 1 times 16 is negative 16. No remainder. So that means negative 1 is the solution. X squared plus 16 is my solution. I could use the quadratic formula where this is A, this is B, and that's C. I could do that. Or, since there's only one x, I'm going to use PEMDAS backwards. So I set it equal to 0. I subtract 16s from both sides. I get x squared equals minus 16. Square root both sides. I get x is equal to plus or minus 4i, because the negative turns into the I. Square root of 16 is 4. And guys, that's actually 2 answers. So my other 2 answers are x is equal to 4i and x is equal to negative 4i. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4 answers. All right, and that's it for 14. Alrighty, 16. We'll do everything exactly the same. There's my p. There's my q. So my p's over my q's is plus or minus 1, plus or minus 2, plus or minus 3, plus or minus 4, plus or minus 6, plus or minus 12. Don't get in the bad habit of thinking that always p over q is going to be whole numbers. Remember, it's working out nicely because this q is 1. All right. Make my box. Inside the box, I have 1, 4, 7, 16, and 12. Outside, I'm going to try 1. Drop down the 1. 1 times 1 is 1. 4 and 1 is 5. 1 times 5 is 5. 7 and 5 is 12. 12, 28, 28, 40. So remember, I'm going to make my fail list over here. And 1 is the first thing that fails. So now that 1 failed, I'm going to try negative 1. 1, negative 1 gives me 3. Negative 3 gives me 4. Negative 4 gives me 12. Negative 12 gives me no remainder. That means I got one solution. X is equal to negative 1. Now remember, I have to have 4. I know I'm going to have 4 because that degree is 4. Now this is x cubed plus 3x squared plus 4x plus 12. I'm going to make a brand new box. This time I put in 1, 3, 4, and 12. I already tried 1 and negative 1. Now I'm going to try 2. Drop down the 2. 1. 2 times 1 is 2. Gives me 5. 2 times 5 is 10. Gives me 14. Gives me 28. No, that's not going to work. So I put 2 in my fail list. Now I'm going to try. So I'm going to try negative 2. Drop down the 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Gives me 1. Negative 2 times 1 is negative 2. Gives me 2. Gives me negative 4. And that's going to be a remainder of 8, which means negative 2 is on my list of failing. So now I'm going to move on and try 3. So I try 3. Drop down the 1. 3 times 1 is 3. Gives me 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Gives me 22. That's going to give me 66. So 3 is not going to work. So now I'm going to move on and try negative 3. So now I try negative 3. Drop down the 1. Negative 3. 0. Negative 3 times 0 is 0. Gives me 4. Negative 3 times 4 is negative 12. So that's a remainder, which means negative 3 is the solution. So now I have my new problem, x squared plus 4. And I remember I'm going to factor that into x plus 2, x minus 2, which gives me my solution is x equal to 2, and x is equal to negative 2. So there's my 4 solutions, x is equal to 2, x is equal to negative 2. And that's it for 16. Alright, 18 is going to be just like all the other problems we did. There's my P. Here's my Q. So how do I get 3? Well, 1 and 3. How do I get 4? 1 and 4 and 2 and 2. So when I do my list of P's over Q's, I'm going to have plus or minus 1, plus or minus 3. That's from everything being over 1. Now I'm going to do everything over 2. So I'm going to have plus or minus 1 half, plus or minus 3 halves. A lot of people forgot that the Q's being a number bigger than 1 makes the fraction show up. And then you're also going to have plus or minus 1/4, plus or minus 3/4. So everything's the exact same except now your P's or Q's could be fractions. So now I put in my box everything. I put 4, 4, negative 11, negative 12, and negative 3. Outside the box I'm going to put 1. Try 1. 1 times 4 is 4. Gives me 8. 8 gives me negative 3. 1 times negative 3 is negative 3. Gives me negative 15. Gives me negative 15. Gives me negative 18. So remember, I'm going to make my little fail list. So I know 1 is not going to work no matter what. Now I try negative 1. Makes that negative 4. Makes that 0. Negative 1 and 0 is 0, which makes this negative 11. Negative 1 and negative 11 is positive 11, which makes this negative 1. Negative 1 and negative 1 is positive 1, which makes this negative 2, which means negative 1 fails. So now I'm going to try 2. Or not 2, I'm going to try 3, because 3 is the next thing on my list. So now I'm going to try 3. 3 times 4 is 12, gives me 16. 3 times 16 is 64, which is going to give me 53. 3 times 53 is 159. See how that's not going to work, so I know 3 is going to fail. So now I'm going to try negative 3. Gives me negative 12, gives me negative 8, gives me positive 24, gives me 13, gives me negative 39, gives me negative 51, which is going to give me a really big positive number, which is not going to work. So I know negative 3 is not going to work. So I tried all the whole numbers, so now I have to try fractions. So I'm going to try 1/2 next. So now I'm going to try 1/2. Drop down the 4. 4 times 1/2 is 2. 4 and 2 is 6. 1/2 times 6 is 3. Gives me negative 8. 1/2 times negative 8 is negative 4. Gives me negative 16. And then 1/2 is not going to work, because 1/2 of negative 16 is negative 8. So now I'm going to try negative 1/2. So since 1/2 didn't work, I'm going to try negative 1/2. Drop down the 4. Half of negative 1/2 of 4 is negative 2, which gives me 2. Negative 1/2 of 2 is negative 1, which gives me negative 12. Negative times a negative is positive, so that gives me 6. Gives me negative 6. Negative 1/2 times negative 6 is positive 3, which is no remainder. Which means 1/2 is going to be my first answer. Now, I have 4x cubed plus 2x squared minus 12x minus 6. Since it's x cubed, I'm going to make my new box. And in that box, I'm going to have 4, 2, negative 12, and negative 6. And I'm going to start drawing again. I'm going to try negative 1/2 again because I don't want to try another nasty fraction, and there's a chance that it can be repeat because it's not on my list. So negative 1/2, drop down 4. Negative 1/2 of 4 is negative 2, gives me 0. Negative 1/2 of 0 is 0, gives me negative 12. Negative times a negative is a positive, so it gives me negative 6. No remainder. So negative 1/2 is my second answer. Now, I'm left with 4x squared minus 12 equals 0. I could use the quadratic formula, where this is a, this is b, 0, and c is negative 12, but since there's only one x, it's much easier to use parentheses, PEMDAS backwards. So I get 4x squared equals 12. I divide both sides by 4, so I get x squared equals 3, and I square root both sides. I get x is equal to plus or minus radical 3. So there's my other two answers. X is equal to radical 3. X equals negative radical 3. So 1, 2, 3, 4 different answers. And that's it for 18. Alright, in number 20, we're working backwards. Number 20, we're working backwards. They're giving you solutions. So the solutions are 1, 2, and 3. Well, in solutions, remember that means x is equal to 1, x is equal to 2, and x is equal to 3. Now, it's just like the last problems where before, if we had a set of parentheses, we set it equal to 0, and it gave us the opposite. So the opposite is going to be inside our parentheses. So inside the parentheses, x minus 1, because if I set x minus 1 equal to 0, it would give me x is equal to 1, which makes this x minus 2, which makes this x minus 3. Now remember, they're all equal to 0. Now, I just have to multiply these three together. So the first thing we have to do is we have to pick 2 to multiply. So I pick the first two, and I'm going to FOIL them. I get x squared. I do the outside to get minus 2x. The inside to get minus 1x. Together, that's minus 3x. And then I do the last two to get plus 2. I didn't do anything with x minus 3, so it just drops down. Now I just have to multiply. I'm going to take x to everything. So I get x times x squared is x cubed. X times minus 3x is minus 3x squared. X times 2 is plus 2x. Now I'm taking minus 3 to everything. Minus 3 times x squared is minus 3x squared. Notice I line everything up. I line the x squareds up so I don't have to do anything thinking about it later. Minus 3 times minus 3x is plus 9x. Minus 3 times 2 is minus 6. I combine everything. So my answer is x cubed minus 6x squared plus 11x minus 6. Remember, it's equal to 0. So that's my equation. They want an equation is the answer. And that's it.